There are moments in life when reality gives us an answer we simply don't want to accept. Sometimes it's the end of a relationship, a missed opportunity, a loss we can't undo. And when that happens, our first instinct isn't always acceptance, it's to look for another answer. Shadow of the Colossus begins exactly with that idea, but it goes deeper and tells more in a way that maybe you didn't notice. The game is usually remembered for the giants, the impossible climbs, the emotional ending, but I think the story's most important moment happens long before any of that. Spoiler alert. Get out of here now if you don't want to know more about this. It happens before Wonder becomes playable. The opening cutscene carries many crucial decisions, and all of them have already been made. We watch Wonder ride towards the Forbidden Lands. We watch him carry Mono into the ancient shrine. We watch him place her on the altar. We listen as Dormin speaks for the first time. Only then, the game finally gives us the control. That may seem like a small design decision. I don't think it is, because by the time we begin playing, the most important choice has already been made. Wonder has already crossed the line. The Forbidden Lands are not simply a cursed place. They are a place his own people believe should never be entered. The game never spends much time explaining why, almost as if it wanted us to focus less on the place itself and more on the act of crossing the line. That's what makes the opening so fascinating. The first thing Shadow of the Colossus asks us to do is not fight, explore, or solve a puzzle. It asks us to continue a decision we never got to make. That changed the way I see everything that comes after, because Wonder's tragedy doesn't begin after the first Colossus is defeated. It begins with a single belief that his reason is unique, important enough to justify going where no one else should. And that's deeply human, because our biggest mistakes don't usually start with cruelty. They begin when we convince ourselves that our situation is different, that there is a good reason to make an exception, and sometimes all it takes is someone to tell us we are not wrong. If going to the Forbidden Lands represents the line Wanda chose to cross, Dormin represents the voice waiting on the other side. One of the details I always found fascinating is the way Dormin speaks, not with a single voice, but with two, a masculine voice and a feminine one, speaking in loose synchronization. It's unsettling, almost as if ambiguity itself were speaking. And I don't think that's accidental, because that's exactly how difficult decisions usually sound inside our own heads. They are conversations. One part of us points to everything we stand to lose. Another quietly reminds us of everything we could still recover. We don't hear certainty, we hear negotiation. That's what makes Dormin so interesting. He never leads Wonder into the Forbidden Lands, neither tells him to steal the sword or bring Mono's body to the shrine. By the time they meet, all of that has already happened. Dormin doesn't create Wonder's desire, he simply gives it one final direction, and that's a distinction that changes the entire story. Because some of the most dangerous voices we'll ever hear don't ask us to become someone else. They simply tell us what we want to listen. That maybe this impossible situation isn't as final as it seems. And when we're desperate enough, the distance between what's acceptable and what's justifiable begins to disappear. If Dormin represents the possibility of changing reality, the Colossi represents the reality refusing to change. That's probably why I never been able to see them as villains. When we first encounter them, some don't even care about us. They're not threatening innocent lives. Many of them are simply existing. Some wander aimlessly, some sleep, and that's an unusual choice because almost every game wants us to feel justified before a fight begins. Shadow of the Colossus refuses to do that. Instead, it asks us to become the aggressor. Most battles start the same way, not with an attack, but with a decision. The decisions to draw the sword, to climb, to stab. That completely changes what these encounters mean, almost like the game is reminding us that some things resist us for a reason. Reality isn't designed to surrender every time we desperately want something. Some answers remain no, no matter how madly we wish they were yes. And that's one way to understand why most Colossi feel impossibly large. It isn't about feeling epic. It's an expression of the fact that some realities are simply bigger than we are. Death, time, consequences, and that seems the quiet tragedy hidden inside every battle. We are not defeating monsters. We are exhausting ourselves trying to change fate itself. The most interesting thing about defeating a Colossus is that strength is never enough. No matter how determined Wonder is, he cannot simply overpower them. Every battle begins with observation, looking, waiting, trying to understand. Not the Colossus itself, but where it can be broken. Eventually, we always find it, a weak spot. Sometimes hidden beneath stone, sometimes protected by fur, or only exposed for a few seconds. And suddenly, an opportunity finally appears. And that's a fascinating metaphor, because we don't abandon our principles all at once. We look for exceptions, a reason the situation is different, that the rules shouldn't apply this time. The weak spot isn't just a gameplay mechanic, it's finding a crack in our conviction. Once we find a justification, we are open to the first exception, and after that, fighting the seconds becomes much easier. By the end of the journey, Wonder isn't succeeding because he became stronger. He's succeeding because each compromise makes the next one easier to accept. That's why every victory feels strangely uncomfortable, and the game makes sure you see it. We are watching the gradual dismantling of the very principles that once told us to stop. As the journey continues, Wonder begins to change. His skin grows pale, his eyes lose their brightness, dark veins spread across his body. Gradually, the game makes visible what had been happening all along. Because Wonder's greatest transformation isn't physical, it's moral. What's fascinating is that his objective never changes. He still wants the same thing, to bring Mono back. His determination doesn't disappear. Even his love is still there. What disappears are the boundaries that once restrained him, and that's a frightening idea. Becoming someone else is a process, and the end is beyond any projection. It happens one decision at a time, one exception, one justification, until one day we barely recognize the person making those choices. I don't think the game is telling us that determination is dangerous or that love corrupts us. It's asking a much quieter question. What happens when a beautiful purpose demands that we slowly abandon everything that once made it beautiful? By the end of the game, Wonder finally reaches his goal, but he's no longer the same person who began the journey. And that's one of the game's most visceral truths. The greatest cost of refusing reality isn't always failing to change it. It's becoming unrecognizable in the process. What obsession almost made you lose yourself? Let me know. If you like this, please hit the like button. If you want more, check my other videos and subscribe. There's new content every Wednesday. I'm Charles, and I truly appreciate your time.